please let me know. And tell me if you can see the PowerPoint as well. Wonderful. Great. At least somebody responded. And by the way, this is going to be the last webinar for this year. So see you next year at least. And we're going to have a lot of other interesting topics next year as well. Wonderful. Great. Hello, Jim, as well. All right, we're just going to give it a couple of minutes to make sure that everybody joins in so we don't forget anybody. Hope you guys have had a great weekend as well. Thanks a lot, Omar. No. Give it one more minute. All right, guys, let's get started. I think most of you guys already know me. I'm the technical trainer here in the Nordic countries. Take care of a lot of testings, presentations, workshops, etc., etc. So during this webinar, which is going to be about advanced surveillance, how we can use AI to make us feel better or sleep better at night, especially in this time when it already starts here in the Nordics to get dark quite early. Already like 2 p.m. it gets quite dark, so we want to make sure that we have great systems that can keep us safe and notify us when there's something we need to attend to. So today's topic is going to be about that. Mostly it's going to be in terms of cameras, which is the difference about the series. Let's have a look at about the agenda. Be about the AI products divided a little bit into series, because I know that there might have been some confusion in terms of what camera do I need, what analytics does it provide, what can we do. Also in terms of possibilities, now that we are in a situation when we are addressing this COVID-19 situation, which is quite fierce to the business across the globe. And therefore we have customized some solutions that are based for to address some of that, to make it a little bit easier for you to run your business as well and help out some of those retail stores that have customers out there. So and using AI in general to use technology to provide security for us as people. And then I'm going to go through a little bit of the analytics, the most used analytics, how they are, how they look, and what the possibilities are, and then some requirements as well. What do we need in order to achieve good results? And then I'm going to go a little bit through the project design tool just to give you a quick touch of that. So is there anybody who knows the project design tool, have tried it? Okay, I'm just gonna introduce it a little bit to you guys, then you're gonna get a little bit more familiar with it. So it's part of the toolbox and all the different tools that we have in Dahua. So that's gonna help you out, do better quotations and so on and so on. All right, and then last but not least, we're gonna have a small Q&A session. If there's anything you didn't think I went through or something that was a little bit too quick, I'd be happy to explain that to you again, and we can go back some slides and so on and so on. As I always say during the webinar, if any of you guys have any questions, just go ahead, interrupt me, and let's try to have a look about it. Oh, okay. So the second Christian is Rico. Thanks. All right. So this is actually in general what it's going to be about. And as I said, just go ahead and interrupt me, but this is more or less going to be mostly about the series, how to divide them, how to distinguish them. So I hope most of you guys, I can tell that you guys have been already joining some of the other webinars that I've been holding this last couple of weeks. So, but we're going to do lots of more different types of webinars with different topics next year, so don't worry. All right. Let's go through the product selection. When we look at the Light series, first of all, which provides us with which gives us covers the simplest solutions. But when I say simplest solutions, they are actually quite much more advanced than many other manufacturers out there, because we provide lots of value for money. If we look at the resolution range, it goes all the way from 2 to 8 megapixels. So 4K in our lightest series whatsoever. And they come with Starlight sensors as well. So you don't see that many Starlight sensors. When I'm saying Starlight sensors, I'm talking about Starlight is actually a term that we use for our great low light performance cameras. So whenever you see a camera which says Starlight, then you know it's already going to provide you with great low light performance. So another thing that you usually don't see in a light series is, even if you find a higher resolution for a more price effective camera, you wouldn't find it with a low light sensor. So that's what we are doing differently, and we have been doing that for years and years. And with even our light series, we are actually breaking, or proving the myth that price does not distinguish if the camera should be great or not. So it's not always a matter of price. So you can get great cameras for even lower pricing. It's just a matter of which manufacturer you choose. So in our light series as well, we do have analytics. We have the simplest analytics. We have stuff like tripwires and intrusions. We're going to tell you much more about what's going to go on with the light series. We're going to have a lot of amazing features in the light series. We're going to have AI models with it as well. So that's going to be for next year. So, but we're going to do a webinar about that. Don't worry. So generally, to put everything down, conclude everything, light series is when you need a very price effective, competitive, super competitive camera, and people really just expect a great low light performance, and that's it, more or less. When we just to recommend you, one of the models where I think you get lots of bang for the buck is the HDW 2531 T model. Is there anybody who've tried this camera before? It's been around for quite some time. So what did you think about the performance generally, comparing the price with the performance? Not the turret one, all right. I definitely like this a lot. First of all, it provides me with a very focal lens, so it gives me a lot of possibility installation-wise. And then it has great low light performance and is a pretty high resolution. Sometimes when you look at some of the low light performances that you might buy, which are usually in 2 megapixel, or they used to be usually, or for other manufacturers, if you even want to be able to buy them in the price range, they usually would be with a lower resolution. The only downside of that part is great low light performance for the evening, but during the day, if we wanted to have higher resolution, that's where things start going south, because generally when you have too low resolution during the day, you miss out on a lot of different details that you might want. That could be a cash register system, that could be a lot of different things. Once you want to zoom into that playback, then things start to pixelate and you don't get the crisp color of, for instance, when the person standing behind the counter is giving that change. For instance, if the customer says, I paid with a 500 krona bill, and then the cashier registered it as a 200 krona bill, then sometimes that could be a misunderstanding. This is where resolution is super important, that we get a lot of detailings. That could also be a perpetrator that came into the shop, a thief, a burglar, or somebody, a suspect that just came into the shop. If we want to capture that person's face with the highest details, then obviously we need to have higher resolution. So if we can combine somehow higher resolution with low light performance, this is more or less a good camera for a great benchmark in terms of considering price and also good performance as well. So, and I'm gonna show you why I'm choosing these eyeball cameras all the time. I'm a great fan, by the way, of these eyeball cameras, and I'm gonna explain it later on, what makes the real difference with it. So, and nevertheless, not to forget, you don't get an aperture of 1.5 with that type of sensor as well, which obviously provides us with a lot of light hitting the sensor, which gives us the low light performance that we need. And also, when we capture more and more of the light, then we are also utilizing that IR that we are projecting by ourselves. And not to forget, the WVDR, usually in light series products, generally speaking, from manufacturers, when we talk about WVDR, which we would use, for instance, if it was a shop entrance. When we have a shop entrance, usually the tough part about it is, I remember when I used to install cameras back in the time, then WVDR, I'm talking about the challenge I used to have, like somewhat 10 years ago. You wouldn't find WVDR in light series product, which were obviously very competitive. And whenever the shop owner, for instance, wanted a camera that could point directly towards the entrance of the shop, where they might have a glass entrance, then the faces weren't that clear because we had too much strong light coming from outside. So I could either choose, did I want to have the clear image from outside or from the inside? I couldn't have both. Then I would need a great WVDR camera and not a digital WVDR, which you would find at many competitors, especially when we are talking light series products. So, but with our light series product, you will get real WVDR, mechanical WVDR, not digital. So is there anybody who's in doubt about what the WVDR function does? Okay, great. So then if we try to go over to the Pro series, which is my favorite series, and I assume that most of you guys have been playing around lots with the Pro series. Anybody who is not that familiar with our Pro AI series? All right, it seems like more or less most people have tried it. Okay, so what we did in our Pro series, which is the 5 series, we added a 5 megapixel range as well. That's gonna give you huge advantages in terms of competitiveness, because you get a lot of more analytics features in the 5 series as well. So, and by the way, the 5 series cameras, they you can actually add a anti-corrosion coating to them. If you request to do that, there is a MOQ for it. So, but then the camera is NEMA 4X approved. So that means it's optional. You can buy it with that coating. You have to notify us, and then the camera will actually do much better in harsh environment. That could be seashore environments when you usually would use anti-corrosion cameras. But since anti-corrosion cameras are quite expensive, generally speaking, then you can use some of these cameras. And what to say, your coverage is that it's approved by the NEMA 4X certification. So that's a possibility. But in general, when we talk about our Pro Series, most of you guys might know already our 4 Series cameras. The 4 Series cameras are all getting end of life. So that doesn't mean that you cannot buy, what to say, that type of camera. We're just changing everything into being the 5 Series now. So in the future, there's not going to be any 4 Series from what I know up until now. So everything is changing into the 4th generation. The 4th generation, for instance, a very used camera would be 4431. The number 3 is going to turn into a 4. That doesn't mean that it's going to be 4441. But once that generation type changes, then that's already going to be moved over to the 5 series then. So there is a lot of different options. Before in times, the difference between the 5 and the 4 was also that 4 series was always fixed lens, and the 5 series you would be able to have varifocal. So now 5 series consists of fixed and varifocal lenses. So that's just to make it very clear. So in the 5 series, what more do we get in terms of comparing it with the light series? We get even better low light performance. As you can see, the sensor sizes, they are Starlight Plus sensors. That means even better sensors than before. So they come in a variety of 2 and 4 megapixel when we are talking about these Starlight Plus sensors, which are, by the way, amazing. If you haven't tried it, you'd be surprised how good low light performance you'll get out of it. So apart from that, you get a lot of different analytics. You get stuff like face detection, which is standard. You get SMD, which is a newer function in all of our 5 series cameras, which stands for smart motion detection. And I have a couple of examples to show you guys how it looks. But SMD is added as a standard thing in our 5 series. You get perimeter protection. Perimeter protection consists of the type of rules like tripwires, intrusions, abandoned and missing objects. Then you have people counting as well, and heat mapping. So when you compare our Pro series with many other manufacturers, what to say, mid-range or professional series, you won't get as many AI functions as you would get with our cameras. I would bet you that we would have the most analytics for, what to say, the lowest cost generally. And then we have the EPOE, which is patented features for our 5 series. That means you can wire for up to 800 meters with UTP cable directly to the camera from a EPOE NVR or an EPOE switch. Or you can use, we have some special devices where you can connect them. Then you don't have to have any camera or any switch that is necessarily EPOE. You can buy these small devices and put them in between. And EPOE also consists of a technology that's called EOC, Ethernet over coaxial. So you can run all the way wires that are 1,000 meters up to, and then run PoE through them. That's why it's called EOC. And then you can have IP cameras, because for some of those old installations, old infrastructures, they used to use coaxial. And obviously, when we are in the Nordics, the labor cost is quite high. That's why we need to have some technologies that can help us in order not to having to exchange all the wiring. So yes, EPOE might not be as significant for everybody, because maybe you don't need to have such a long wiring. But what you can consider is, let's assume you are doing a bigger installation and you might have some longer distances. What you would usually end up doing is putting a lot of switches in junction boxes around the whole vicinity, and then you would wire cameras to each one of these boxes, right? But then what happens is, when something goes bad, a camera stops working, something happens, or a switch turns off or whatever, the power's off. So then the problem is, once you need to start troubleshooting, then obviously when you are using a lot of junction boxes with a lot of different switches, it's usually a big installation, it's usually a big site. So then you would have to go through most of them to troubleshoot, to figure out where did it stop working. So that's why EPOE is definitely a much better advantage for you, because you can have the wiring directly from the camera all the way back to the switch, to the main switch, and that's it. You don't have to have these junction boxes all the way around. And then usually you would only have to troubleshoot, either it's over at the camera side or at the main switch. That's it. You don't have to spend as much time on troubleshooting. So that is definitely one of the advantages I would put out there that you should make use of. Last but not least, it can actually also save you a lot of power usage, because it's more efficient in terms of using less power. You don't have to have all those switches running out there. So it's also more environmental friendly. That's why it's put on a leaf over there. The EPOE, Omar, with good results, I assume, or generally the 5 series. And also because EPOE also works with other manufacturers, so it's not just limited to Dahua cameras. We are willing to share the technology as well. So, but it definitely does give you an edge in terms of wiring and everything and troubleshooting in the future, because at the end of the day, when you're calculating the cost of an installation for you guys, you should definitely calculate it based on a longer period in order to figure out if it's rentable for you at the end of the day, if you're making money out of this situation, because then you also have to add in the cost for the service, for the maintenance, for the troubleshooting, all of this stuff. So if you calculate all of this stuff, EPOE can definitely give you an upper hand. So yeah, they have a lot of great experience with it in Iceland as well. So that's great to hear, definitely. So another part that's changed a little bit in the 5 series is also we added some new appearances. Some of the appearances that you guys are used to, we're going to keep those, but then we added a couple of appearances as well. We have some bigger dome cameras. They're a little bit deeper than previously, but then you have junction box and everything possible to assemble inside as well. You have some more features for wiring as well. Also, there is a H housing for the bullet, as you can see all the way to the left in the upper corner. We have the new appearance, which is also looking much better. That was also from the 7 series, from our Ultra series appearance. We also added that to our Pro series appearance. The great thing about it is you can do all the wiring directly to the junction box. You don't have to buy a separated junction box necessarily for the bullet cameras, to where you can have the cable connectors and everything. Everything is included once you buy the camera. That's it. You don't need any more accessories necessarily. Obviously, if you want to pole mount it, you would need a couple of accessories for it. But all in all, it makes a better possibility for you to mount it when you have all-in-one camera. So that was more or less what the Pro series provides. We're gonna look into all of these analytics, how they look like, and so on and so on. So don't worry about that. But I just wanted to give you the examples here. When we look at the SMD feature, how does it look? Face detection, heat mapping, perimeter protection, and people counting. So let's start off with the SMD. I do a lot of testing by myself at home and so on and so on. So my children witness a lot of testings, and could you please walk over there for me and doing this and so on and so on. Already, my son I think he has already exceeded my enthusiasm or interest in cameras already. He's like going nuts with PTZ cameras in his room. He needs surveillance. He needs locks and everything for all his toys, because who knows, somebody might break into his room, right? So he's very keen on having PTZ's cameras in there. He has his own small IMO camera in there, and he's like constantly checking if somebody changed something. So I think he's following my path of getting nuts with CCTV. So, but let's look at the SMD feature. How does it look? This is from my house, where you can see from the side. There you go. My son is walking over there. It might be lagging a little bit. Maybe it's just the PowerPoint that's running right now. But from that short video footage, the system detects that we have motion detection, but not just motion detection. We have motion detection all the way over there. That is a human, not just anything that's moving. So let me just try to run that again. You can see, because he's moving out there, we have the box. That means now it's detecting something. So what we could do with that is that we could set a rule in our application, for instance, the DMSS app, where it should only trigger the motion detection triggered by humans or vehicles. So then I would only get push notifications from those type of alarms, not just from leaves, trees moving, and etc., etc. But you can see all the way far out there. That's at least, I think it's somewhat 15 meters of a distance with a child. It's actually already triggering by smart motion detection. So that's going to make it much more efficient for you. Or over here, I can easily see if my son is going to the shack to pick up some tools, and then all of a sudden nobody knows where those tools went, right? There you see it triggered already, and as well on his friend, gonna trigger. There you go. You have the two rugrats over there. So at the end of the day, when you need to define if a CCTV system is secure and easy to use and good, then it's based on the amount of alarms that you would usually get, right? When you talk about alarm systems, if you get, let's assume, 30 false alarms every day, then at the end of the day, what happens is you stop listening to those alarms. So and a security system is just as good as the amount of false alarms that you get. So in this way, we can definitely limit it. Also, because in terms of search, I'm going to show you a couple of examples. Search is so much easier with smart motion detection than it was with regular motion detection. I remember some of the first motion detection systems I did. I think I would assume somewhat 10, 12 years ago. Usually what would happen is that you would have a motion detection sensitivity set to a certain level where it ends up looking like it's constantly recording because the sensitivity is so high and even the smallest shadows are triggering the motion detection. So if you had motion detection or constant recording, it's more or less, it used to be more or less the same. Can anybody concur to that? Anybody tried that before? Back in times, not nowadays. So smart motion detection is oh, yes, yeah, smart motion detection is definitely something that can help you out and help the end customers. You tried it only once, Danny. I don't believe that. And over here at the entrance, so you can see I'm doing weird stuff like 10:30 p.m. sometimes, but just to actually emphasize how it looks like. So even if it's hobbits, midgets, anybody, children breaking into a house at 10, 11 o'clock in the night, you'll be able to get alarms that are triggering. So that's why we do it. We do all these tests in real environments to actually provide you with something that's useful. You are allowed to use all these type of videos, add customers as well to convince them why they should be choosing some of these products. And obviously, I definitely urge you guys to do some of these videos by yourself as well to emphasize for the customer, because whenever the customer sees you doing some of these videos and giving the examples, it shows you that there is uh, a sense of honesty to it, because they know you, they know how you work, and so on and so on in many terms. And also they see the environment, and they actually see that the environment is not just something that's set up in a perfect demo room. It's actually how you would be installing cameras as well. And from this image, look at the beautiful lighting distribution over here. There's no white light or anything out there. There's only the street lamp far away, but it's running in IR mode. Everything is so much more clear. I assume that some of you guys have tried it when we have only the IR, which is useful more or less in the middle. Yeah. Sometimes that would happen when you had done the previous installations. You would mostly see like a halo effect with the IR. Sometimes you don't get like super clear images from the side as well. Just got a question here from Stefan. Is there a scenario when it's better to use SMD instead of Tripwire intrusions, or same question in other way, when you should use SMD instead of intrusion or Tripwire? Generally, I wouldn't really suggest that there's any main reason why you should be using this or that. One of the things you can do with the Tripwire part is you can use the Tripwire as an intrusion for also adding different type of objects. That doesn't need to necessarily be only humans and vehicles. Yes, in most situations you would only want the system to filter out those type of alarms, but that could be, let's assume some type of machine or some type of box, package, or anything that might not be a person or a vehicle. In that sense, maybe the Tripwire, since you can adjust the minimum and maximum size of the object, would definitely make sense. But not really. I think some of the ranges for the Tripwires are a little bit longer than the SMD you would find. That's at least from my testings. And the other part is also, yeah, with the Tripwires, you can control exactly where you want those Tripwires, and you can make separated rules, and you can also see the distinctions between these rules. So if you have a wider, bigger area, and you want to create separated rules for individual areas, then it might make much more sense to use Tripwire and intrusion. So I hope it answers your question. You're not able to use the analytics of the Tripwires and everything if you're also using SMD. So it's either one of them. Great. And let's see how the smart motion detection search feature looks like, because obviously one thing is to trigger it, but if you want to search for some of these recordings, this is just an example. And by the way, just for the information, I'm recording all these webinars, so we're going to share them in a couple of days, and also the PowerPoints and everything. So I assume some of you guys would want some of the material we're going to go through today. So there you see I have the whole list of alarms, and I could choose. You could see that there are different channel 3 and 2 and so on and so on. So I can easily find the different triggerings. So I can search specifically on different time frames. Maybe, for instance, only on during the evening, I would want to have the search for the alarms, because usually from, maybe I'm not a good example because I do a lot of tests even midnight, but normal people, I would say, would usually not have people wandering around their house at between 11 and 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. or something. So in those terms, it's easier to search for those. Yeah, sure, no problem, no problem. Gustav. So there you see there's a lot of different examples with recordings where we have a human triggering the smart motion detection, and there you see the Hobbit again. I would say you could sell this this type of stuff to Sauron, I'm quite sure. All right, you can see I have plenty of different examples. If you haven't tried it, go ahead and try it. This is super convincing. Yeah, this was from the recording earlier, as I said, with my son. That was the triggering of the alarm, and my wife is coming over there as well to help him with the bicycle. So, and that's quite far away, which actually definitely gives you an advantage in terms of making it much easier to search. So let's look at face detection. I don't know how many of you guys have been using face detection up until now. Face detection is, just a second, just the questions. Do we have store recordings in a centralized location of Dahua like cloud? We don't have it yet. We are working on a solution where we could have a lot of different examples, so on and so on, to be added kind of like a Dahua wiki webpage as well. We are working on it. I can't promise you anything, but we are definitely working on it. So you could pull out those different examples, if it's Tripwire, if it's face detection, face recognition, ANPR, all these type of recordings, because obviously we have a big library of recordings. I just need to structurize it. We just changed a lot of different files from Google Drive, from Dropbox to Google Drive. So we are structurizing some of that, and then we're going to give you access to a lot of different recordings with a lot of examples, and also from different types of cameras. Yes, these recordings, if you mean about the NVR, if that's what your question is about, those recordings were stored in the NVR, yes. So if we look into face detection is definitely one of the things that I think we are doing much better than any other competitor whatsoever. The only thing that might get customers to hesitate sometimes whenever we're talking about face detection and stuff is like, oh, what about GDPR? What do we do? How do we do? Is it legal? Is it not legal? I assume that that's the question for many people, right? So what we do with face detection is to distinguish it from face recognition. When we are talking about face detection, we are only doing the recording like we usually would do, and then we are snapshotting all the faces. We can search for the faces in galleries, but we don't classify them as being thieves, as being burglars, employees, or whatever we want to classify them as. So as long as we're not classifying anybody as a bully or whatever, bully database or something, then everything's completely legal from a GDPR side of it, as long as we're making sure to delete those recordings within the set requirements from there are some local regulations in terms of how long time can we keep the recordings for, and so on and so on. So this is completely legal for you to use the face detection. But what the face detection feature does, it makes it much easier for you to do the searches, to filter out, to find specific people. If there is anybody that might end up being a suspect, then it's easier to find him again. So a couple of examples, which I think is amazing. I was actually surprised that the face detection was working that well. These are examples from a face detection feature done by our AI NVR as well. Then we have a smart search feature as well with the AI NVR. But the detection could also have been done with the camera. So let's have a look. I'm going to be doing a search for just some recording, and then I'm just gonna pick out a face. So this can be done directly from a recording, but this could also be done from the live view as well. So this is from my backyard. Here you see my son is walking over here, and yes, that's my son. Might not be looking like him exactly, but it is. And there you see I search for him, and the system says that we have been doing some face detections earlier, and we found that there was a 93% or 83% match for this face that I'm searching for right now. So there you go. Try to see, don't blink, try to see how fast it's going to be capturing my son's face. He's just going to be turning slightly with, it's going to be triggering in a couple of seconds. Look, right there, boom, there we have it. So from triggering the face there to the search that I did before, that was the result. So imagine how easily you'd be able to find bad guys without classifying them in any way. Even you can see from the side of his face, it says that there is a 77% possibility that this might be the same person. So that just shows you that it's an amazing AI advantage you might have compared with other manufacturers as well. So it's a very, very strong algorithm that works super quick as well. So if you haven't tried out or introduced face detection to any customer or anything, definitely do it. You are missing out on a lot of possibilities because this is a very, very strong feature. So usually this is great. During the day, it's very easy, so on and so on. But what about during the night? Because obviously it's not like the thief is going to come in and turn on the light and ask for the key for the basement and go inside, rob the whole place, and then put the key back and turn off the light, right? Usually we want to be able to see what about during the evening? Can we do something when it's night, when it's very dark? If we have already great sensors in terms of low light performance, then we can utilize these features very good. This you can see, this is very late. This is approximately what, 12:30 in the night, 10:30 a.m. So as I said, I wouldn't recommend smart motion detection at my house because I'm alert 24/7. So I'm just going to show you how the recordings are. And by the way, look at the amazing performance that it has in the very tough conditions where it's very dark. It's super clear as well. There you have me walking around with a hat, with tools in my hand to break in, with gloves. It has to look authentic, right? There we go. I'm doing the face detection box. And you can even do this with multiple people at the same time. It's going to divide them. So you'd be having more than one face. You would be having multiple faces. And then I'm going to do the search within 3 days, I think. And then I'm going to bump up the percentage because I can choose the similarity percentage of it. So if I get too many results, I can just narrow in and look at the results. Yes, wearing a hat, stealing a segboard. My neighbors usually must be thinking, like, every night I go out, try to steal the same car, breaking into the same house and stealing the same segboard. You can see in a matter of seconds it finds these results, but also difference from night and day. It still understands that this is 72% the same person, or even 73% the same person, with a cap, without a cap, in the difference between day and night. If that's not convincing, then I don't know what is. So to me, this actually definitely emphasizes the strength of this AI possibility that you might have. So as I said, if you haven't played around with it, do it, show your customers, and let them know what possibilities that are out there, even with Pro Series products that are definitely more affordable than many other manufacturers, low light performance, or what to say, light series products, sorry. And that's how easy it is to do a backup. So at the end of the day, it narrows down the search time. It's much, much easier and quicker to find that suspect that might be wandering around your premises at night. I hope that was as convincing for you guys as it was for me the first time I tried this. Then we have stuff like heat mapping. Heat mapping has been around in our Ultra Series cameras, which we now passed down to our Pro Series products because we wanted to add more and more features to it. And since we are adding more and more algorithms to it, it requires more and more processor power, more and more RAM and ROM in order to process all of these things. But we're going to look into that as well. So heat mapping, what it does is it actually creates a heat map. I assume that Christian can remember this image. The heat map feature, what it does is it actually looks for pixel changes. So whenever there is a movement, which obviously is a pixel change, the system is going to be recording that all the time. And then it's going to be creating a picture once an hour where you could see the specific movements, what to say. The more movement, the darker the color gets. So blue means very little movement. When there's no color, that means no movement. And when you have the green color, it means lots of movement, or red is lots of movement. So now you can see from this store, for instance, it's the cashier. Next to the cashier, we have most movement, and that's quite obvious. So this is a way to actually utilize the possibilities when you want to figure out. That could be, for instance, a shop. If you want to figure out if you're running a campaign on a certain product, do we have more movement in that area, or in terms of do we have more customers coming over there than we had last week or the week before or the month before? Before we were not doing any campaigns, now we are. We want to see if it had any results attached to it. That's where we can use heat mapping, because it shows us, what to say, the pixel changes, the movement that might have been there. That could also be industrial kitchen. That could, for instance, help you out in terms of if you rearrange some of the kitchen to optimize the process of where people are walking, how they are using the kitchen. Are they using it in the way that I had expected once I changed the layout of the kitchen, or is it just as clumsy as it was earlier, or do we have too much congestion in some areas? Then obviously that's gonna help us out, because at the end of the day, when we make some changes, if it's a retail shop, if it's a any type of process, or that could even be emergency exits when we have bigger crowds, or let's assume it's amusement parks. If we want to see if we have a congestion of lots of people only from one exit but not on the other, maybe we could rearrange some of that once the amusement park closes. So we can see all of those things because we get data. We get reliable data that we can use and actually, create analysis based on. Because if you expect a person to remember how was it last year, how was it last week, how was it last hour, even, it could be hard. And also the assumption of if something is busy from one person to another person is very different. It's kind of like if I ask you what's a fast car. Obviously, if I ask a Formula One driver, I assume that his opinion of a fast car might be vastly different from my opinion. So obviously, everything is individual. That's why we need systems that can capture the data and collect some of it, and we can create reports based on that. So this is where we can use heat mapping as well. And there's lots of different other examples, definitely, but those were just a couple of examples to make you understand what heat mapping is and where we can use it. So what about perimeter protection? Perimeter protection, just a second, just got a question. Can you get it automatic heat map reports by email, for example, the store manager, like once a week? No, unfortunately, that's not possible. You have to do the searches for the individual time frame that you want to search for. So unfortunately, you're not. So we have some different possibilities, not helping you out in that case, but heat mapping is a little bit differently done when we go to the Ultra series. So yeah, I can just tell you guys now, because heat mapping is not just based on movement in our 7 series fisheye, for instance. Heat map is based on, because this is a dedicated for camera for people counting and heat mapping as well. In the 7 series camera, in the fisheye camera, then you have the possibility to get a heat map not just based on the pixel changes, but based on humans, because it looks with this algorithm, it looks for heads, and once it's looking down and it can recognize heads, that's where it's basing its heat map on, not just on any type of movement. That could be, for instance, a fan that's just moving. Obviously, we don't want that one to trigger our heat map, or a TV running commercials all day long, stuff like that. So then the Ultra series will do a little bit better. Merging heat maps from several, no, that's not a possibility as well, unfortunately. So perimeter protection, I would say, would be one of the most used analysis that has been done with cameras. Perimeter protection, as I said, that usually consists of tripwires or intrusion zones. This is one of the tests that we have been doing at our office. This was one of my colleagues called Nikolai, and as you can see, he's walking into an area we have set as an intrusion zone. System triggers immediately. We can set up alarms in terms of push notifications. A lot of different things could be triggering. That could be alarm outputs. That could be some lamps, some audio message, anything, emails, whatsoever. Or even all the way over there. Look at the distance and look at his clothes color even. He's actually blending a little bit into the environment in the background, but still the camera captures him quite easily. So as you can see, he's walking around with a suitcase in this case. I was doing a lot of those different tests out there walking around, but since we were doing a abandoned object, I thought that maybe it's not the best way if I was walking around there with the suitcase and dropped it somewhere and went back to the office, then people might get the wrong idea, because obviously me and Nikolai, we look quite different apart from each other. So Nikolai got this one. And it works in the real world. On Thursday, we got push notification and there was a burglary in big constructions. Yeah, there you go. Perimeter protection definitely works very, very well. All right. The distance, once we did this test from, just to give you an understanding of how far was it away, what can I expect, and so on and so on. I would say what you would see in the data sheet, it doesn't promise this distance, but we are always trying to push our technology to the, beyond the limit than what it's meant for. But it's just to give you a couple of examples of, if you are asking if this is going to work on 20 meters, don't worry, it's going to work. We tried this on a distance of 51 meters from our office. So this is just an example. Stick to the data sheets, definitely, but we tried it out. It works well. And it has also received a lot of attention from independent test sources. Or over here with the newer perimeter protection algorithm, which triggers, for instance, in this case, I've only set the rule to trigger on humans, no vehicles. And there you go, it's not triggering on the vehicle as well. I think you might be remembering some of these recording, Rico. Which camera I was using? I was using a 5442. I'm gonna give you a couple of examples now of what different models I think are amazing. I would say this might be one of my top 3 cameras. I would say maybe it's my favorite camera, the HDW 5442T. So if you want to write down some specific models, please do write some of those. Yeah, that's more or less the inside of the camera is exactly the same, Omar. The reason I prefer this one is because it's an eyeball shape. That's one of the reasons. Another part is it's not long ago we released a 5 series camera with motorized zoom with the new algorithm. So this camera is not that old actually. The abandoned, no, I haven't tried the abandoned object in, we do actually have some colleagues who've been doing a lot of tests. We have some recordings which actually work great. But I think at the end of the day, it's when we are talking about any type of analytics, the limitation will definitely be the scenario. So obviously, if you have a very obscured scenario with a lot of changes, a lot of colors and stuff, it will also confuse the camera, just as it would confuse us more than it would if we have an as even scenario as possible. I'm not saying that you have to have an empty scenario, but I'm just saying the more crowded the scenario becomes, the harder it is. But it does work well with, but obviously, let's assume I have a completely gray surface out there, and I have a briefcase that is completely gray as well, and I put it down where it actually blends in more or less 80–90% with the background. Yes, then it's going to be very difficult for the camera to distinguish if somebody abandoned this, compared to if it was a blue suitcase, green suitcase, whatever, so, or red suitcase. So this is what you have to understand whenever we are talking about analytics. It's a matter of scenario more than it's the camera actually, because we are using some of the most advanced algorithm that's on the market right now. So the camera already has the possibility. It's just a matter of how you place it, where you how you understand the great scenario. So when I'm talking about why would I choose this camera as one of my favorites? First of all, it has an aperture of 1.8, but it's based on a 4 megapixel resolution, and it's a varifocal lens as well. Usually you would have if you wanted to have a very low aperture on a varifocal lens, then you would usually have a much bigger housing. So that's why the aperture is a little bit bigger on the motorized lens compared to the fixed lens, or what to say, the varifocal lens, sorry. So apart from that, we have, as I said before, we do have great resolutions for low light performance cameras, which are 2 megapixel as well. Many manufacturers mostly focus on getting good low light performance on low resolution. Why is that? Because it's cheaper. So what we do differently is we increase the sensor size. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how it looks when we increase the sensor size. We have a bigger sensor. That's why we can provide you with just as good low light performance as many other competitors, or even better than their low resolution cameras. So we were actually doing, for a while ago, a couple of years ago, we were doing a great low light performance test with a lot of very strong and very big manufacturers in the market. And what we were doing the test with is, once we were comparing these, we were actually asking them to bring their best performing cameras in the low light environment. So all of them brought 2 megapixel cameras with great low light performance, they thought, until they saw what our 4K, even 4K camera could do, which actually beat all of them in terms of low light performance. So we did better low light performance even with a much higher resolution. So this is one of our strengths, that we are great at this stuff, because first of all, We buy sensors in huge quantities, and we have been doing cameras for many, many years. So we know exactly what we're looking for in a great camera, and we know how to build a great camera. Because a great camera, in terms of defining what's a great camera, is not just distinguished by good low light performance. It's also based on how does it do with strong light reflections. How good does it perform when you have this scenario with the supermarket where I was talking about? We have the strong light coming from outside. We also have some different light from inside, but obviously we want to see the details from both sides. So that's where we want to have the WVDR function. When we go to our Pro Series camera, we bumped it up all the way to 140 dB. And by the way, you won't be able to see 140 dB in many other competitors' Pro Series cameras. This means it actually performs even better than our low light performance in tough lighting conditions, changing lighting conditions as well. And apart from that, it has lots of algorithms, as I already mentioned. We also have it in a fixed lens where the aperture is a little bit different. It comes in a black model as well. Oh, sorry, I'm going back. And here you see the aperture is a little bit brighter, so you get a little bit more light, a little bit better low light performance. So comes in a fixed lens as well. Then we have this camera, which is also one of my newer favorites. It's not been around the market for such a long time. It's a 5 megapixel, which is quite new to Pro Series to have 5 megapixel. It also have a lot of the great features in terms of good aperture, good low light performance, not as good as the 5442, but a pretty good low light performance. One of the main advantages is that it has, as you can see, many of the same things. It actually is super competitive when we talk about price. So if you want to compete with competitors generally, and you have a little bit higher resolution and everything is, many times stuff is decided by pricing. So we created a camera that can help you sort out those requirements. Great pricing, great performance. The 5541 would definitely be the camera for you guys. So I'm only showing you these examples as eyeball cameras. They come in a variety. They come in bullet shapes. They come in the dome shape as well. So no worries. So let's get to the stuff why I would definitely prefer eyeball shapes compared to the dome shapes or bullet shapes. Don't get me wrong. I'm talking about generally. I'm not talking about just Dahua or other competitors. I'm talking about generally why the reason is that I would choose the eyeball shape. The downside of it, usually compared to a dome, is that it's not IK10 classified. Yes, that's true. So it's not as vandal proof as a dome camera, but they are quite sturdy. You'd be finding all of them, more or less, almost all of them with metal housings. So they are very, very strong, very, very durable. They don't have the same classification, but they are very, very durable. So I wouldn't be that worried. Obviously, if we have a tender that requires it to be an IK10 camera, then obviously we can't use an eyeball camera. So, but generally, if we are looking into having good low light performing cameras with, like most versatile housing, then I would definitely prefer to use the eyeball as well. So one of the biggest advantages with eyeball cameras is that it's hermetically sealed. What it means is that once you get the camera from us directly from the factory, it's completely sealed. That means once you install it and it's reached the end customer, you have never broken that sealing. So that's still completely closed compared to a dome shape where you would have to open up the glass housing. And then obviously there is a possibility that you might expose it to moisture. I'm not saying that's a definite. It determines, for instance, sometimes if people are doing service maintenance in November, in December, obviously the humidity is much higher than the summer. So you might end up in some situations be capturing a lot of humidity inside the camera. And if you don't change these silica gel bags, these moisture bags that would capture that little bit of extra moisture, yeah, that could be just summer in Iceland as well. If you don't have, if you haven't exchanged some of those small bags that capture the minimum moisture that's captured inside the camera, then obviously you'll end up sometimes locking in moisture inside, and then you have this moisture showing on the glass, and then it looks like as if the camera is an RMA. So usually it ends up being because people are not quite sure how to do service maintenance of these type of housings. uh, but if you want to rule out that part, eyeball is very, very simple. You never break the sealant from even the factory. Other part is that it's one screw adjustment. That means you should usually change them once a year. So and that's a general thing. But obviously, if you don't open up the camera, then obviously you're not exposing it to any moisture as well. No more moisture than you would, because it is completely sealed afterwards as well. So, but that would just be my recommendation. Whenever you're doing a service maintenance, always exchange them. Don't ever do a service maintenance without exchanging them. Obviously, if you're doing some troubleshooting 2 days after you change them, 5 days after you change them, then obviously you wouldn't have to change them. But it's a general good rule to follow. Change them whenever you get the possibility. You'll extend the lifetime of it. Is the seal is too loose for the eyeball cameras? In the dome. Are we talking about the seal around the enclosure, or are we talking about the seal between the glass and the lens? One of the other part that you would sometimes deal with, I'll get to it, when you unscrew the glass casing. I haven't been experiencing that we have had loose seals, but if it's a general issue that you might have, then you should definitely report it, and we'll have a look at it and in our help desk system, and report them as an RMA. If you have some moisture or something that's captured inside, we would be happy to look into it, but it's not something that we encounter. We do sometimes encounter issues with IR sometimes when it's dome reflections and stuff, but that's a general thing. And what usually might happen sometimes is if the rubber piece from the lens is not touching the glass, then you might have a small bit of a gap. No moisture, just hard to keep in place when installing on roof. My personal experience, I haven't tried that before where it's been working. I've been installing lots of different dome cameras as well back in time. So I haven't tried it where it's been an issue to keep them in track. Sometimes if you're turning the camera too much, you might end up with some trouble, but that's not usually from the glass or the sealant. All right. Next part is in the eyeball. Usually the downside before in time, long time ago, they would only come in a fixed lens model. That's why people would tend sometimes to use dome cameras or bullet cameras. Now you can get them in fixed and varifocal. You have been able to do that, and we are only widening the range more and more to be able to manufacture these in the varifocal lens. And then avoid IR reflection, as I was just saying before. Whenever has anybody experienced IR reflection in dome cameras? And I'm talking about generally with dome cameras, not just Dahua cameras, with any brand. Anybody had some reflections inside when they are in the night mode? That's great. Yeah, exactly. I assume everybody has seen it or at some point in life. I have definitely seen a lot of IR reflection, generally speaking. Usually, as I said, it's the rubber piece that is not touching the glass. It could be many different things. It can also be stuff like when we are using dome cameras, that would be more particular to have reflection than you would see in any other camera. If you're using, the reason why is when you look at bullet cameras or eyeball cameras, usually the lens and the IR are separated quite a lot. So once you have that sealant, or the IR and the lens uh, separated, then you won't be able to have that type of IR reflection. You might have some kind of other reflection if you have some dirt, some spider web. Spider web we can't help. Obviously, spiders love our cameras, but when you have some dust, some dirt, something that might make it a little bit worse for you to see a clear picture, but that's not IR reflection. But with dome cameras, if you have the least bit of dirt, since the IR and the lens is not divided as what to say, particularly as eyeball or bullet cameras, then it would be much easier to get those reflections. So eyeball cameras avoids reflections, so that's also one of the benefits of using them. And also you can install them on walls and ceilings. You don't have to have special brackets for eyeball or eyeball cameras to mount them on walls or ceilings. If you can hide the wiring somewhere in behind, then you could just install it directly how you want it. We do have wall brackets for them, or what to say, junction boxes for walls if you want to use them. But with dome cameras, I would assume that, is there anybody who is mounting dome cameras vertically directly on wall surfaces? I hope not, because usually mounting dome cameras directly vertically on wall surfaces is actually one of the greatest sources to having IR reflection. So that's definitely a no-no. But if you want to make sure to have exchangeable cameras in the car for customers, you might need less amount of different type of cameras, because you could just use one type of housing. And then one of the things that we changed from previous eyeball cameras, where we actually learned from our mistakes, is that we actually put in a small hatch to make it a little bit easier to reset. So small bit of a hatch in the eyeball camera. Before, in times, you would have to split open the camera, and also the SD card. Over there, you see, once I open up the hatch, I have the SD card and the reset button, which is easy to access. So that's one of the reasons why I would prefer eyeball cameras. And I assume many people from a lot of experience are also turning a little bit more into to eyeball cameras. Yes, they might not be looking as elegant installing them, especially inside, but they're definitely, in terms of when you need to look at the turnover you make from a complete installation, it will increase your efficiency, because it's going to be quicker and faster for you to install an eyeball camera than any other camera, I would say. I hope somebody can agree with this, because that's definitely my personal experience. So just to give you an example of what happens when we go to the half-inch sensor, as I was just talking about, these it's the same type of sensor all of these cameras that I just showed you are using, the 1/1.8-inch sensor. So this is actually what it looks like compared to when we go from our previous generation of 4-megapixel cameras. This is how it's going to be looking. So we were trying to compare this during a event with another customer, a live event, where I actually built a room that was already more or less closed. There was a small bit of a light source, not much, and I was disabling the IR to actually figure out how strong is the sensor. Because once I disable any other type of IR, I'm actually pushing the sensor to actually show me how well of a low light performance it can give me. So the sensor is doing all the hard work right now, and I actually brought a lamp just to add a little bit of light, because if we want to push it to the limit, we need a small bit of a light source in order to see the low light performance. But this is how it looks like when we have a 1/3 of an inch sensor, which has been used widely in the whole industry to give us 4-megapixel low light performance generally, or just 4-megapixel performance when we are using them during the night. When we turn over to the new generation, the half-inch sensor, the main difference between half-inch and 1/3 of an inch, this is how it looks. Same scenario, and we did not turn on any light. So it was the same conditions. It just looks like night and day, right? But believe me, we were doing this test during a live event where we created this, so anybody was free to go ahead and have a look inside the room to see if I was actually telling the truth or not. So everybody got to see that this is the performance you get when you turn over to our 4th generation half-an-inch low light performance sensor. So believe me, it is so dark that the person who was going into the room was not able to tell what was on the shelves over here. So that's how dark it is. And it's hard to show on video because it looks as if somebody turned on the light, but that's just not the case. So when we start having cameras that can perform that well, it really creates a lot of value. But what we have to remember is whenever we are doing analytics, everything is based on the material that we are providing for that algorithm. So the better low light performance, the better intrusion zone detection, tripwire detection, abandoned missing object, face detection. All of this is just getting better, the better low light performance we are having in the night, especially. So another example of 5 series cameras that are great is the full color 4 megapixel. Before last year, we introduced it in a 2 megapixel camera, the 4239, which has been selling widely. Now we have it in a 4 megapixel. I assume some of you guys might have tried it already. The difference between the other 5 series cameras is that this one has an aperture of 1.0. Compared to the 1.6 or varifocal 1.8 is that it's allowing lots of more light in. So you will have even better low light performance. This camera does not have any IR, so that means we won't have any reflections from raining. I assume some of you guys might have tried sometimes when we have cameras running in the night where it's raining a lot, then it triggers a lot of motion detection, or it's a little bit hard to see if there is somebody breaking in during the night, a burglar or something, because of the rain. And since we are usually using IR in the night, we have a lot of reflection from the rain, right? But with the full color camera, no reflection even if it rains. It's actually hard to tell if it's raining because there's no reflection. So since it's using the aperture of 1.0, which means even better low light performance, it utilizes even more light from the light sources that are available, even it's very limited light. So one downside of when we are using an aperture of 1.0 is that we don't have as good of a depth of field as we might have with an aperture of 1.6 or 1.8. So the things that are quite far away in the vicinity, it might be harder for us because to see them clearer because we don't have as good depth of field. But that's not a problem because we're talking about a fixed lens camera. So usually the distance where we would be able to distinguish a person or stuff would usually not be as far because we're using a fixed lens already. Not to forget, if you're not using IR, we are using less power, and then obviously our installation is a little bit more green. But apart from that, a lot of the same stuff that we saw previously. So it's a aperture of 1.0 is what to remember whenever we are talking about full color cameras. So this is also how it looks when I'm pushing the cameras, the 4 megapixel sensors from previous generations, comparing it with our, I could see with the name I had dropped in another D. It's HDBW, and forget this D over here. So I hope you can see my mouse where it's pointing. So this is actually what it looks like when we had IR mode on. So maybe the camera was not installed as high as it was possible. I just made a video that's on my Facebook page in order to show people the difference I filmed with my phone and had the camera test. Exactly, this is definitely, as I said earlier, do a lot of these tests, show them the truth before they have to make a decision in terms of what they want to buy. Because if we have to remember that the end customers, they don't have the same understanding of CCTV, of the cameras, or this and that. So if we want to compare the cameras, from their understanding, many times a 4 megapixel camera is a 4 megapixel camera. And I think from this page, from these slides, I already convinced you there could be a huge difference between 4 megapixel and 4 megapixel, right? But our end customers don't have that understanding, and that's fine enough. That's fair enough. We don't expect them to dig deep to all the small details of sensors, specifications. Let them see what's happening. Let them see what's going on, and then they can decide from there. All right? And these examples would definitely convince them, because you're showing them real scenarios. You're not just showing them something that looks good or is supposed to look good. You're showing them the real world. So since we're not doing that well in colored mode, in the right hand picture over here, it looks like as if there is enormous amounts of light. There actually isn't, but it looks like that with our full color camera, because it's utilizing more light than any other camera, more or less. So this is actually how it looks. If it's lagging, that might be from my laptop. Maybe it's running too many processes, I would assume. And by the way, this one can actually also distinguish the by the algorithm to detect me as a human when it's quite dark already. Oh, that's too bad. Let me show you. But once you receive these PowerPoints, you could be running them in very, very clear images. I think you can see that from over here. There you go, me having fun at 11:30 in the night. In exactly where I live is just behind it. So if I'm arrested at some point making some of these videos, just remember I made them for you guys. I didn't make them for myself. So this is what you get when you have great low light performance. You get to describe the person's opinion much better than anything else, because you get stuff in color, not just in black and white. Because if you want to describe the appearance more specifically, you have to describe the colors, the clothes he was wearing. And as you can see from this image, it's quite easily to distinguish. All the different colors are showing very, very easily with the full color camera. So this is also one of the benefits. If you add a little bit of light, then you could use these full color cameras. If you have no light whatsoever, I wouldn't recommend you to use the full color cameras. So, but with a little bit of light, they'll do amazing in low light performance in color. So another camera that I would definitely talk a little bit about is our active deterrence cameras. This is one of the newer models that's called R1 in the name. That's an easy way to distinguish it. Oh, sorry, I can tell that I forgot to change some of the parts into English, but I assume most of you guys can read it already. So it comes in a variety. It has the 5 megapixel and 2 megapixel range. So what makes this camera great is that it has a enhanced speaker. So that means comparing it with any other camera with speaker, it has a much better speaker than before. It has two-way talk, since it also has a microphone inside. Also, it has dual lighting. So that means white light and IR mode as well. So down here, I added mask detection. The reason why I added mask detection is because we added a custom firmware or created a customized firmware where you can use it for this camera for mask detection. So if anybody is not wearing a mask, we can trigger an alarm, and then we can trigger an audio file. We have that running in our office as well. Whenever a person is detected without a mask, then it's going to be triggering this audio and also showing the white light, so people are alert that this notification is for me directly. So apart from that, whenever it's you can add a audio file from wherever. Whenever the guard is alert, he can have a two-way talk, more or less, and then he can set the audio file. You could set it as Arnold, whoever, leave the area. I would assume if Arnold is speaking about it, then there might be something about it, so you'd better get out of here. So we also tried it out at our office. And by the way, the mask detection feature, we also have a customized firmware for any 5 series 4th generation camera, where you can ask this mask detection feature as well. So you could get notified by email, you could trigger relays, you can do a lot of the things you'd also be able to do. So this is from our office, where we were just doing a simple test with the mask detection. And I can tell you it works great. There you go. My colleague is walking there, and then you see it was flashing. I actually just added a audio file. I think some of you guys might have already heard or seen it before. But it works well, and you can see he's not happy with that situation, so he's going back out there. This was just an example. We have, by the way, a lot of great. There's gonna be another video of something with mass detection just to give you an understanding. So, as I said before, the difference between the sensor sizes is the reason why we kept the. If you wanted to have the great low light performance, we want to keep the pixel size as the same. So, if we wanted to create a high resolution compared to before, and we want to keep the same pixel size for our low light performance, we have to increase the sensor size. So that's why our Starlight Plus is doing as amazing as it's doing. So as I said, it got a lot of credit from independent sources in terms of doing tests from cameras. They are comparing it with companies like Vigilant, Bosch, Access, as well as others, to check how good the pixels per feet, in this case pixel per meter, is doing in terms of detecting humans, filtering out humans from other obstacles, from leaves and so on and so on. So the conclusion is that, first of all, we were actually getting less false alarms than many other manufacturers. Apart from that, we needed less pixels per feet or pixels per meters than many other manufacturers. And the best thing about it is that they were priced lower. Our cameras were priced lower than any of the other tested manufacturers. So this again proves why our cameras are doing so well in the market. They are flying off the shelves because you get more or less everything for a much, much better price. So this was what I was talking about. What we used to do is that we have for a lower series camera, we had a minimum RAM of 500, and for the higher series, for the ultra series, you usually have 1 gigabit of RAM, and the same with the ROM. And they had not as many algorithms as we are running today, because not just the low light performance we also need a lot of functions. So when we turned over to our newer AI algorithms, we didn't just pack it with a lot of algorithms, because the power should be following, what to say, the processor power, the RAM should be following. Just as you could see, if I'm running too many processors on my computer, that is having a hard time dealing with it. So, but if we add more and more power to it, then it's not a problem. So you won't find any Pro Series camera in the market that can handle as many algorithms as ours, with WVDR running, with full frames running at the same time. It's just not possible. If you find something, please let me know. I'd be happy to test it. So that was the 5 series. Does anybody have any questions in terms of the 5 series? Let's just go ahead. We can also just keep it for the Q&A. Then we have the Ultra series. Gives you a lot of all the benefits that you found from the 5 series as well. What it adds to it is we provide you with the possibility of using 12 megapixel, so even higher resolution than you would have in the 5 series. And if you want to, for instance, forgot to tell you about the 5 series, if you want to stun customers in order of performance, if you just want to blow them away, 5 series should be enough. But if you want to blow their mind completely, then you go for the Ultra series. Because in the Ultra series, we get even better low light performance. So that means bigger sensor even. And we have lots of more connection possibilities, because it's packed with even more power. We have other AI features apart from the ones that are already displayed in the Pro series, which is stuff like video metadata, face recognition, N6 face recognition. Sorry for the spelling. Some of it, I assume that I just mixed it by mistake. Face recognition and privacy masking. So, as I said, even better low light performance, packed with more power, better AI algorithms as well. One of the cameras I would definitely prefer is stuff like the 71242, which is quite new, 12 megapixel, 1.8 aperture, which is actually great, and the sensor size. So I just checked the website of many different manufacturers, I think a couple of weeks ago. I haven't seen a 12 megapixel performing that well at night as these specifications. If you find anything, even something that might be even for the double of the price, you can ask your distributor for the price. Please let me know, and I'm quite sure that there isn't. So if you want decent low light performance in a higher resolution, go for this camera. And as you can see, temperature range is already all the way down to -40. So you get a wide temperature range as well. You wouldn't find all the way down to -40. Many times it would be -30. So if you have harsh conditions or you want to add it to a tender to rule out some competitors, that's some of the stuff. That's pixel size, the temperature range, so on and so on. Or this one, which I would say, if I had to choose like one camera with the best low light performance in terms of also having IR possibility, but just generally one of the best camera, it would be this one. 7442, doesn't matter whichever housing you choose, but 7442 because it has an aperture of 1.2, same size sensor as our 5 series, but just with a better aperture. So if you have a better aperture, that means better low light performance as well. Apart from that, we also have stuff like the alarm outputs. We have more outputs than we would have in any Pro Series camera. So if you want to trigger a lot of different things, yeah, this one, right? The 7442. It is. I haven't seen anything nearly as good as this one for the low light performance. The only thing that comes close to it is the 5 series, but this one is even outperforming that one, which is for obvious reasons, a better aperture. If somebody hasn't tried this one out and is being asked for like something that would give you the best low light performance, buy this one. Yes, you don't have them in eyeball at all. No, only bullets and domes. Yes. In our Ultra series, we have a lot of other cameras as well, stuff like panoramic cameras and so on and so on. But I only wanted to focus with this webinar on the stuff that would make most sense to you guys on daily basis. So we're gonna have another one with more advanced cameras that are not being used as like a common use, but more of a project-based use. So this is actually one of the recordings. Again, behind my house, there's a path. This is like 1:15 p.m. in the night, and you can see we have approximately somewhat 30 meters, and I can see it quite clearly. Yes, there is light, but there's actually much less light than you would be able to see with your own eyes. And there's no issue there to trigger me. And even it's a little bit hard to see because I'm just kind of this dark blob out there. So what it provides with you, I assume that many of you have already seen a lot of our examples with face recognition. I just did a test. This is from our AI NVR, which is using the same algorithm as our 7 series. So I assume many of you guys already know Home Alone, Kevin McAllister. Kevin McAllister had been performing in Home Alone. I remember him from my childhood. I used to see all those movies, but we did a test with him, and once he was much older, so 27 years later, the system could actually tell that this is the same person. Tell me, is it even possible for you to distinguish that that's the same person? Barely, I would assume. And imagine that a system that could do it immediately, instantly, without having to wait and think. It could do it instantly on a whole group of people that's walking through. So this is definitely added a lot of value to it. So if you want to search for a specific person, this is also one of the features for the 7 series. Then we have privacy masking. That's also one of the benefits where we can enable. This is a demo from our office in China. This is how it looks, privacy protection for the face. If you want to use this feature, you have to enable the metadata collection feature. You can choose either only on faces, or on the whole body. This is definitely one of the functions that many different installers has been asking for. So if you hear anything about privacy masking, no worries. We can do those in our 7 series cameras. If you're using it together with our DSS Pro V7 or V8, you can actually remove and add the masking to it. So I'm just going to show you as a demo from a camera that we have in our office. Let me just show you guys. I can show you. Hope you guys can see this. I'm gonna also show you guys how it looks when I try to disable some of the face masking. Was it working? There you go. Let me try to disable it. Disable the masking, there you go. And I can also enable it. This is from my live view. I can also do that from my playback. That's fine, guys. Tak. Hope you guys saw that one. That was just to give you an example of it in real life. I hope it convinced you guys. To me, it's a stunning feature, definitely. Okay. Video metadata collection. This is how it looks like. This can be done directly from the camera in itself. This is from the web browser. This can also be done from our AI NVRs, so it doesn't have to be our camera necessarily. So once we do it from our AI NVR, we can actually use any type of third-party camera with it, or even 5 series, 3 series, anything, 2 series, yeah. So it captures with our metadata collection, we can capture faces, we can capture the appearance of the person, we can capture the different metadata from his face as well. If it's an older gentleman, if it's a younger person, if he's wearing glasses, no glasses, beard, mask, I could just go on and on and on. So, and also the cars, if we are talking about the cars, which color, if we want to search for them as well. If we have the right distance and the size, or angle, what to say, and the size of the number plate, we can even get the number plates. So it's also using an OCR algorithm. The 7 series are great, but Dahua does not make these on stock in EU, which makes it difficult to sell. It's just a matter of, if you request it, then no problem. We'll make sure to keep them in stock. It's just a matter of demand, request and demand. So as long as we have a bigger demand for it, so it's not going to be a problem. Obviously, if we only have the order for a couple of them at the time, then it's going to be more difficult. So if generally, it just comes to a lot of different products. If you already have a forecast for 100 cameras, 50 cameras or something, it's obviously going to be easier to keep them in stock. But if we only sell a couple of them now and then, obviously it's going to be harder for us to keep them in stock. We are going to keep those in stock that has a higher run rate. So that's just a matter of demand. But I'm sure that we can figure out something, Mikhail. And go back over here. So this is an overview of our AI capabilities with our 7 series, 5 series. Obviously, you'll find that in the PowerPoint. So just gives you an idea about what can I expect from which series. Where do I need which camera? Which camera should I buy for this customer, because maybe he has the potential to extend his solution to something bigger, right? I can tell that already our time, I've gone a little bit further than what we expected in the time frame. I hope you guys can accept that. It's not going to be that much longer. I assume like 5-10 minutes, then we're done. So hope you guys can forgive me. I'm spending a little bit more time to explain some of the stuff because this is the last webinar, so I want to make sure that everybody gets exactly what it's all about. So thank you for bearing with me at least. So we created some customized solutions, especially due to this situation that we have to deal with nowadays with the COVID-19. So as I said before, we have the no mask detection feature, which actually works well. Whoa. These are actually some of the examples where our colleagues in Poland have given us some great video footage, how you can utilize this camera function and how well it works. You can add a lamp directly to the camera. You don't have to have an NVR. A lot of different ways to put this together. So as you can see, tells us very easily if a person is wearing a mask, the light is switching, so it will be easy for end customers to understand if they need to be alert about something. If you have a speaker, you can also, if you have cameras with audio, you can also add an audio file, and then they can just be notified by audio as well. And there you see, even wearing some of those construction site helmets and some Halloween mask of some sort, I guess, it's still saying that he's not wearing a mask or obscuring the face. Sometimes we might not be aware that our face has to be completely showing. Sometimes if we are covering up some part of it, the system actually does a great job in terms of detecting that that person is not wearing a mask. In fact, it's something that might be looking, but it's not a mask. But what about once we have a crowd, a group of people, where some might be wearing masks, but some may not? Then our system is doing a great job, as we can tell. Even he's surprised that, like, wow, it detected that I didn't have a mask, but the other ones had. And there you see. Over here. Yes, that's true, Dylan. Thanks. And there you go. So this just shows you that privacy masking works, but obviously in some situations it might not work when people have their homemade masks in different types. I know that you guys are wondering, or maybe some of you guys are wondering, what about the viziers that have been approved at least to wear here in Denmark? I don't know in any of the other countries. Instead of using the regular face masks like these, we are actually working on trying to see if we can add that to the feature of the mask detection, so it supports as well for different types of face masks, stuff like this one as well. So we are working on it, but I think already mask detection is not done by that many already. So what do I need in order to obtain this as a solution? Either you can use, as I said before, regular 5 series with customized firmware, then you get mask detection. You could add any lamp. This is not our lamp, it's just as an example. You can connect it to a switch, that's it, you don't need any more. Apart from that, if you want to record everything, not just on an SD card, but on an NVR, and you have lots of cameras connected, then you could use an 5 series NVR. Or that could be if the customer already has an NVR, then you could add that to the solution as well. Shows already in the screen. Also, you could choose to trigger the relays, so you have lots of more possibility. You can trigger different relays from different cameras. You can also, if you have multiple entrances, add up to 64 channels based on the amount of the channels on the NVR. So that was more or less what you needed and what you are able to do for mask detection. So next solution is the people counting solution. If you haven't tried out our people counting solution, I would definitely urge you guys to try it out. We have the possibility, I'm going to show you how it looks like, but just to tell you how the topology is, which products do I need, and how can I put this together. Let's assume you have a single entrance. What you would usually do in many countries nowadays, we have a limit in order of how many people are allowed into a shop at the same time, so that we don't have shops that are overcrowded, obviously due to the COVID-19. So in order for that, to achieve that, usually what many malls or shops would do is they would hire a person that would be standing at the entrance counting everybody, or they would have guards in a mall who needs to keep track of how many people do we have in the individual stores. And obviously that's going to be impossible. Therefore, we built a system that's meant for this stuff as well, which makes it much, much easier and also is affordable. So you can use our 3D dedicated people counting camera directly with a wire, just like the mass detection. You can connect the screen to it to an NVR as well, and then you can have a flow chart showing, like a flow view for the customers, so they know exactly how many are allowed to go in there, how many are in there. Is it green or is it red? I need to be cautious about that as a customer entering the shop. And by the way, with the NVR, you can choose to show only for instance, the available number. So you don't have to have all of this showing with the NVR. You can choose which one. And usually you would use the NVR as well when you might have multiple cameras, but you can also use our regular 5 series. It doesn't have to be the dual sensor. You can add a relay directly to a lamp. And when you use the 5 series NVR, you can actually use the alarm input 1 and input 2 to modify the counting. So let's assume the system made a mistake. Somebody was counted twice, or what to say, somebody wasn't counted. Usually you wouldn't ever have it people being counted twice. You would sometimes, if you're unlucky, you might encounter that somebody didn't get counted if they were moving super fast or in. Then you can modify them directly from the relay out. You can choose to add buttons to it, not what to say, delivered by us, but any type of button, just a alarm input you can trigger, and then it counts up and down. What about if we have multiple entrances? There it also makes sense that we use our 5 series NVR, because here you can combine the counting. So if you have multiple cameras, you can have a combined counting, then it will combine all of it. But what about once you have different entrances? As you can see, you can have up to 8 cameras combining together for the counting. But if you have multiple entrances, also goes for the regular 5 series camera, then you would like to have something that could show that these customers from that entrance, instead of having multiple NVRs, you can use our Android boxes, these DPP18A devices, where you can actually just install a specific APK, and then you actually just type in the credentials of the NVR, the IP address, username, password, and then it's actually going to show whatever is happening over here in the flow view of the NVR. Or it could be a digital signage. You would like to add some advertisement directly, and you would like to place in some note. So this is an example. If you use DSS Pro with the BI module, what you can use this for in terms of the people counting, you can install people counting on each floor so that you would know exactly how many people are on individual floors. You could also add these digital signage, which will notify people that now you're not allowed to go in and out. But once you do that with DSS Pro, it requires you to run the MPS, which is the media publishing software that goes together with DSS Pro, and then you could trigger whatever type of content, with however it should be looking like, with logos and everything directly from that software. And you can place these different areas with audio files and whatsoever, so you could limit specific floors for a specific amount of people. This is how it looks like in the DSS Pro. You can divide them into different shops, or that could be floors or departments. You can keep track and create rules for individual one of those, so that we have a limited amount for each one of them. And when you look at, all right, Dan, take care. If you look at the difference between the previous generation of the dual sensor camera to the new generation, which has exactly the same name, but just an S2 added. The difference is that it has a higher accuracy and that it can count more people than it previously could, and has even better low light performance. And the ingress protection is IK10 compared to before, better IR distance as well. So this is the main difference there is. So I would definitely recommend you guys to use that one. When we talk about the 5 series, what to say accuracy do we have? We have a 95% accuracy. I've been using 5 series for some of the cases, which actually works great. If you're using 5 series for people counting, the difference between using the dual sensor and 5 series is, with the dual sensor, you have a minimum installation height of 2.2 meters. We have complete documentation about all these heights, installation requirements, and so on and so on. The dual sensor gives you a lower distance for installations. I would personally recommend that you go at least for 2.5 meters, because we have to understand that the faster people are moving, the less we capture them in the area. So that's why we want to have a height that's acceptable. If we go to the 5 series, I would definitely recommend approximately 3 meters, 3.5 meters for the installation height, which will give you the best option. And as I said before, I would prefer to use varifocal, because once I use varifocal, I get the possibility to adjust zoom in and zoom out, which will affect my counting compared to the fixed lens one. It works with the regular 5 series NVR with the customized firmware, which gives you the possibility, as I said before, to do a combined counting. And then you had the digital signage box, the DPP18 Android box. For this one, you only need an APK installed on it. Then you can actually use it like this, but you can also use it for advertisement as well. We have some specific views where you could choose. This could actually also be directly with the camera, not just with an NVR, but also with the camera directly. You can have some advertisements running, some live video, and then the counting in the right side. You choose however you want to divide this. So how accurate is it? And it's good. Trust me, I did a lot of different calculation. I calculated the accuracy rate for a case that I was doing based on approximately 3 months, which was an outdoor tough scenario with 5 entrances with 7 cameras. Is there a place for all the APKs? There's not really that many APKs. I think there's just one APK you have to install. So if you're asking where you can find them, then we can share them with you. So I calculated based on that outdoor installation, and we actually reached an accuracy of 98.1% within 3 months with an outdoor scenario, which was quite tough. This is how it could be looking like. This is the case from our office. Just 2 different videos running. That's too bad that it's lagging. You guys can see that part once you get the PowerPoint. It just shows you how it would be working. Like if we used it for advertisement, we could set up that customers are not allowed to go in once we reach the the maximum, but we usually just do that for the safety of that person. So that's why. Also, area counting, that could be queue detection. We can set up specific rules that they are not allowed to be more than a specific amount in some area. This is kind of the scenario where I was testing it for the high accuracy. Those 6 people were just counted, 7th, and then you could just try to see if you can count along with it. And it gets quite hard. But this system works excellent. I've been doing plenty of tests, helping out with plenty of cases where it works excellent. So, but just to give you an example. Scenarios like these does not apply to it. Those are not well scenarios because people can be going all the way to the side, so it's going to be hard to count. Instead, we should focus on something like this, where we have it a little bit angled, not too much angle on it, because the more angle we have on it, the harder it is to distinguish if there is a person standing behind them that won't be counted. So that's why we almost want it like 90 degrees or at least some 80, 70 degrees. That should be it. Tools for deployment. I'm not going to go through all the details because you guys can read this by yourself. And as I said, my time is already off, unfortunately. Sorry about that. I have put in already some specific distances. I'm going to change it to English, sorry. I'm we have already set some specific distances for how long of a area can the system detect if we want to do perimeter protection from side with a 5 series camera. Could be a 4 megapixel resolution at least, with an installation height, for example, in this case of 3 meters. If we have these fixed lens possibilities, then it's already listed where these are the ranges that you can expect this to work well on. Or for people counting, we have the difference between the types, the 5, 7, or 8 series cameras. What can they do? They have the possibility of 4 type of rules, for 4 triggering rules, what to say, the line rules, and the area rules we also have. In all those type of cameras, we also have the queue detection, which can send an alarm whenever there's an exceeded amount of customers, or if there is a specific time alarm. For instance, if a person has been waiting more than 2 minutes, 5 minutes, we can trigger an alarm, and we can export all of this data as well. For face detection, there are also some specific rules in terms of height, angle, and everything. And what to remember in terms of face detection is, the more straight the face we get, the better the detection. All right. So I would recommend, if you're doing face detection, let's assume you have an installation height like me, like 2.5 meters. I wouldn't be expecting to do face detection directly right here, because when I'm walking around, I'm not looking towards the camera. But if I did the face detection with this camera, like 6, 7 meters away, then the angle towards my face would be much more direct, so I would get better face detection. So this is some of the stuff you guys need to pay attention to, and obviously also evaluating the scenario, if it's what to say, if it makes sense for the area to do detection. If you have a lot of different colors, a lot of different confusing elements, like a huge bunch of people, then it's going to be a little bit harder, or people blocking each other. Tool for deployment. I don't know if anybody has tried the project design tool, as I mentioned earlier. Just wanted to give you a very, very quick taste of it. All right, Jørgen, thank you for joining. Just want to give you a quick look about the project design tool. All right, here we have it. This is how the project design tool looks like. This is how we can actually add those to our offer, with the drawing, with the location of all the different cameras. So let me just give you a quick overview of how it looks. We have the help over here. That means the user manual. Everything is described in here. So the first step is to add a layout, a picture. We cannot just choose Google directly. So let me just try to go in there and find a map. Dahua office, for instance. Now I have the office. The next part is I need to set, as it's saying here, please set a scale. So I know that this area is, set a scale, click this one. I have to set this area as a scale, so the system actually knows what are the distances in order to make proper calculations. And I know for a fact that this area is approximately some 2 meters wide. All right, good. So that already now the scale is set. The next part is I want to add a camera. I can click over here, and then this one opens up. So once you install it, you're going to be asked which region are you from, and then it's going to be adding those cameras that apply to your region. So now I'm just going to be adding a camera, Z4, 4 times zoom. Then I could choose to move it around. And I can also go ahead here and add them to my favorites over here. You can see already one of these ones, the 5442. Don't get tricked about the P. That's just that it's a PAL camera. That's why. So don't get tricked about it. It's the model I was talking about, E-ZE. So it's with varifocal lens. it's with this range, 2.7 to 12. So it's explained in here. Once you add them to a favorite, all of them are here. So it's easier for you to find them, because in many situations, you would be using the same camera for multiple different offers, right? So, and you can also go ahead and add a customized one. Let's assume that we didn't update it quick enough. Then you can go ahead and add your own camera, type whatever model, choose if it's a visual or thermal, choose the resolution, choose the focal length, and the horizontal field of view. You'd be usually able to see that from the data sheet from that camera, even though it might not end up being updated in this program yet. So I've chosen this camera. I'm going to add a couple of other cameras that I'm using. And already here I have, let me just zoom that out a little bit. Now I have added these cameras. So already here in the visual, it tells me the criteria for the observation, detection, identification, the different colors. But what I would be more interested in would be, for instance, to choose to see if I wanted to do tripwires, if I wanted to set up specific tripwires to figure out, can this one detect a human? Then I need to set in some requirements for the pixels. So what I'm going to do first of all is, as you can see here, down I'm going to choose custom IVS. So up here already, I can choose the installation height. Now my installation height, let's just assume is 3.5 meters. Vertical angle, you can see from the side here. And then the horizontal angle, that's just a matter of where it's pointing. But down here, I can choose the object size. So in my case, I'm just going to be setting it to as a human, the height 1.8. And from the smart pixel, what I learned from my documentation earlier on, that's also part of the training that we do, is we need, if it's a 4 megapixel camera, we need to have 84 pixels in order to do proper perimeter protection with this type of camera, with this type of lens. So here we are. We have the maximum distance here, the 6.2 meters of a distance with these pixel requirements for that installation height. So then you can always play around with this. So this should give you an easy way to figure out, once you add them to the drawing, is this enough? Do I need another camera? And if I'm happy with the setting of this one, then I can just go ahead and copy it. Where did it go? I have it here. I can copy that one. And there you go. So all the names are added there. Okay. So this is an easy way to do a complete layout. I can choose to add a person there if we wanted to add a person. And over here, what to say, I'm also able to set up the specifications of a person, how wide or how large that person is. And then they're going to be showing in my drawing over here. Let me add in a human over here. And let me choose, there we go. We have the human over there. So then it's going to be showing me what I can expect from that angle and that height. So if I go ahead and install that camera a little bit higher, then it's going to be easier for me to see that person. All right, Lars, thanks a lot. You're welcome. We're almost done. So last thing I wanted to show you just how to export this stuff. So what I can do here is I can set up a project name, Dahua DH, Dahua Office, blueprint name, first or second floor, designer, Farhan, a date, remarks, add in a watermark to the paper. I just would rather like to add a customized logo. So let me add in a logo, for instance, company logo. Not car glass. Let me find a company. Whoa. All right. So now I'm just going to export it as a PDF. Boom, there we go. Let me add it to my crowded desktop already. PH Office 2. I think I already added one. There we go. Export is complete. Open up the current path. Yes, please. So now this is how it's going to be looking like. I could add that to my offer for the customer. He can see exactly where these different cameras are deployed. He can see the list of the cameras. He can see the quantity, the focal length. He can get all the details that he needs for each camera that has been put in the drawing, or even the default settings, the default where I wanted to add in all the information about that camera. So that was more or less the project design tool. I hope it gave you an idea about what you can use as well once you are doing quotation or offers for end customers, once you want to add it to a drawing. So that was more or less what I had for you guys. Thanks a lot for paying attention. And thank you all for joining in for the last webinar of this year. And it has been a pleasure. I hope I taught you guys something and you saw something interesting. We had a Q&A session. I don't know if anybody has any Q&A questions. Go ahead and add them there. But we are going to share those with you. We're going to send all of this content by email, also the previous webinars. So I hope you guys can benefit from it and learn from it and share a lot of this information with some of your customers and help you guys convince it. So thanks a lot for joining in. And sorry for the delay, by the way, that we added some time, but I hope it was worth your while. So take care, guys. Stay safe out there during Christmas. Happy or Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to all of you guys. And take care. Please do me a favor. You guys can either add me on LinkedIn if you wanna connect. Please go ahead and and follow our Dahua Technology Nordic News Facebook page so you guys can see all the new information. Last but not least, please do me a favor and scan the feedback QR at the right side so we can get some feedback in terms of what we could change with our trainings in order to make it better and better. We're gonna have a lot of new topics in the next year to help you understand our systems better and better. But thanks all of you guys. Take care. I'm going to stay around for a little while if you guys have some questions, but please do me a favor, scan that one to the right side. Thanks a lot, all of you. Likewise, thank you, guys. Thank you, Jesper. You can actually mix some AI. You can, for instance, mix heat mapping with tripwires, but apart from that, you have to separate them, yeah. I think you can also do tripwires and people counting at the same time. No, sorry. That's my bad. That's not possible. Likewise, Per. Thank you. You're welcome, Dino. I can just check that for you, Dino, immediately with the IVSs. Yes, Dino. It's only possible to do the heat mapping and IVS together, like the perimeter protection. All the other type of analytics you have to do separated. You can use it. The only thing you need to have is, if you want to use it with a monitor, you just have to use either an NVR or the DPP-18A, the small Android box. You can't do it only with the camera because it doesn't have an HDMI output. But with the small Android box, then it's possible with the APK installed.